This interview with Ethical Aquatics is presented by Humble Fish and Reef. Hi, everybody. I'm here with Chris from Ethical Aquatics, and Chris is our one and only Humble Fish approved quarantine vendor for Canada. So this is a really nice treat to be able to talk to you, Chris, and interview you one-on-one like this. So I guess let's just kick it off by, why don't you tell us all about Ethical Aquatics and what made you want to get into selling quarantine fish?
Well, I mean, to start off with, we kind of started off with the idea that we weren't really happy with what we were seeing for the quality of fish and the health of fish, and it just seems like it's a lot to put on the end, the end hobbyist to be in charge of mitigating parasites that might kill an entire tank. So we sort of, we would see what's available, and you can tell that's kind of the first symptoms of a tank wipeout. So we didn't think that that's something that most people should have to go through. So that's kind of why we started the business.
Okay, and that's important because a lot of people, especially new hobbyists, don't realize that if you're going to quarantine your livestock, you have to start with the very first fish that you put in your tank, because once you get a disease in your tank, to get it out, you have to go fallow, you have to catch all the fish. It's a huge hassle. So it's really important, if you're going to start out on the right foot, to quarantine everything from day one, or to buy from a quarantine vendor such as yourself.
Exactly. I don't know, just about every client that we have kind of has the same story. I was buying fish, and then I saw a spot on it once, and then on one, and then suddenly, half the fish in the tank were dead. And then we had to start over, and then we started looking at quarantining and everything else, and had to go set up a separate tank to pull the fish out, to clear everything out of the tank, the display tank. And then they end up losing kind of their prize fish, or hopefully they see them as pets like we do. And it's tough to sit there and watch a fish that's struggling like that for maybe a day or two, or a few days, or it's unfortunate that it takes kind of that to happen a lot of the times. And that's something that we're focused on, is kind of trying to provide the education to people that it doesn't have to be that way. And you can all of these fish can live for years and years and years without having to be replaced, sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's important for new hobbyists who may be watching this video to understand, is that, these diseases are not limited to the fish. I mean, they're waterborne transmissible. They spread throughout the water. It goes from fish to fish. In a closed system, it can be very difficult to manage these diseases, which is, again, why it's either important to quarantine for yourself, or to purchase from someone such as yourself who's doing it for them. And I don't think a lot of people realize they get a quarantine tank, but by the time they actually get into it and they start buying all the medications and the water changes and everything it takes to properly quarantine the fish, they don't quite realize the price that they're incurring. And when, even though we, as quarantine vendors, we sell for a higher price than what you're going to pay in a local fish store, that reason for that higher price is the expense and the time and effort and everything that goes into quarantining the fish properly.
Exactly. I mean, it's just the amount of all that extra water changes, like you say, and electricity and all that, just to run an extra quarantine system on top of all the equipment and the medication as well, which is especially difficult here to acquire. The cost is many times more than the premium that we put on our fish, because we're able to do it a little more efficiently, because we can do quite a few fish all at once, and a little bit more experience, that we can sort of accelerate the process a little bit where possible, without sacrificing any sort of biosecurity or anything like that. And it's just simply the fact of, you know, our fish certainly don't cost double what it does elsewhere, and you likely won't have to buy a second one if you buy it from us.
Exactly. And it's like, you know, that happens to a lot of people where they've got certain fish on their wish list and they keep trying to quarantine the same fish over and over again. It keeps dying. Well, if you just would have bought a quarantine fish, you buy it once, you're done. You're not having to keep buying the same, you know, fish over and over again. And you brought up an excellent point. You know, again, in Canada, it's very difficult to obtain fish medications, which, because I mean, I help people on the forum all the time that are like, you know, they're sending me pictures or videos, and I'm like, well, the fish needs antibiotics, or the fish needs copper, or the fish needs Pro, or and they like, well, I can't get it. And you know, what do I tell you? You know, if you don't have the tools to quarantine the fish, and then that's where you come in, because you do have the tools and the medications to quarantine the fish. So kind of leading into that, can you walk us through your quarantine protocol, your process that you use on all fish?
For sure. You know, once they arrive here, you know, the first step is pretty basic of just kind of dimming the lights of our quarantine room and all the tank lights and all that. And then, you know, we'll open the boxes, you kind of inspect everything just to see kind of the state of what the fish are in. And we go through acclimation, which is a whole other topic on its own. But you know, if we see anything that is kind of questionable straight out of the box, that will be isolated completely into their own system, so that we can deal with whatever issues they may have. And then once we kind of pass sort of inspection, our quarantine system will be pre-dosed to about 1.7 parts per million of copper power, and the fish will be added into there. That's when they'll also receive their first dose of metronidazole. And, you know, that's sort of to get the jump on if God forbid there's any uronema or anything like that, that's potentially could wipe out, you know, a whole tank of fish. We kind of start nipping that in the bud as quickly as possible. Over the next 2 days, the copper is ramped up to 2.5 parts per million with, we use a dosing pump that does 24 equal doses per day. So we found that's really quite a bit more gentle on the fish, and also it's you know, eliminates us having to do it every 8 hours or 6 hours or whatever we can manage. Starting at day 2, we start testing the copper to make sure that it's stuck at 2.25 is about the lowest that we like to get it. We'll try to keep it about 2.35 or higher. And then every 48 hours, we'll dose another 4 doses of metronidazole. And at day 16, day 10 rather, that's when the fish will get their first dose of praziquantel to eliminate any flukes or other worms like that. And then 6 days later, just based on our tank temperature and salinity, we do either another dose of prazi, or if we don't have any wrasses or we isolate the wrasses, we'll do fenbendazole for 12 hours. And then after that, they'll be transferred over to a separate sterile system away from the quarantine system for 14 days of observation. And there's black mollies in each of those tanks to help with kind of parasite identification if anything happens to skip, or to if we missed anything or anything gets by us in the quarantine, the chemotherapy portion of it, or chemophilaxis, we'll catch it there before any of the fish, you know, end up going out for sale. After 14 days, they'll be again, they get another sort of inspection to make sure that there's nothing that we might suspect that there might be a problem, other than, you know, the obvious symptoms of white spots and things like that. If there's something that doesn't quite look right, then we will keep them for longer, or do whatever treatment is necessary to take care of them before getting put up for sale again. We also start feeding medicated food on day 2 to start cleaning out if there's any internal parasites or infections, things like that. And then by the time they're done with the medication portion as well as the medicated food, they're ready to come out into clean water and kind of start, putting a little bit more weight on and getting a little bit nicer for sale to go into somebody's hopefully sterile observation tank for a couple of weeks, just to be sure. That's something we really do recommend. We do everything we can, and we will never sell a fish that doesn't look 100%. But it's one more layer of security to keep your display tank free of parasites or anything like that.
Excellent. That's outstanding. So just to expand upon what you said, I mean, this is, for our listeners, our viewers. So by combining copper and metro, you're treating for prophylactically ick, velvet, brook, urinema, trichodina. You're deworming with both prosy and fenbendazole. So that's treating for black ick, flukes. All sounds like your food soaking medications to treat for both internal parasites and worms. So that's really a full coverage quarantine protocol. And then you're following it up in observation by housing the fish alongside black mollies, which they're formerly freshwater fish, they don't have any immunity or resistance to saltwater pathogens. So if anything slips through your treatment, then it will be caught there. So you're doing everything you can, it sounds like, to make sure that the customer just, gets healthy, disease-free fish. Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Yeah, and something I think is important to touch on is the it's becoming more and more prevalent to hear the words quarantined or treated or things like that, with no sort of detail on what the procedure actually is. We have our full protocol posted on our website, exactly the steps that we follow, and that's something that I'm aware of anyway, that nobody else does anywhere near the level that we do, and we do everything that we can to make sure that you're not getting any parasites into your tanks or systems. So it's just important for people to know that when you see quarantine, you take a second look and just see exactly what that means to whoever that person is or that company that's selling those fish. That one person's definition of quarantined, it ideally would be the same, but it's not. It's very, very different from one place to another of what quarantine means.
Exactly. Get details. And I know I can tell you on my forum, because I've vet every single one of you, and there's only maybe 5 or 6 of you. And I've probably interviewed, well, not interviewed like this, but I've vetted 50 to 60 different vendors who have wanted to be vendors on my forum. None of them, we start talking about quarantine fish, and I'm like, no, that's not quarantine fish. So, when you and I work together and what we talk about and everything, it's like your process is that those are actual quarantine fish, because you are casting a wide net and you're treating for every disease, that we know about for saltwater fish. So that's excellent, outstanding. So somebody watching this, it's in Canada, and they're like, well, I want to buy from you, Chris. How do they go about doing that? How do they buy from you?
Ideally, the easiest place is just to check out the website. It's ethicalaquatics.ca. And you can easily browse and purchase all of the fish that we have available. Everything that's on there will be, quarantine is finished and ready to go. We do offer special order. We do have a special order system that is, that a lot of people really are happy to wait. That's the one thing, is there is it does require a lot of patience, but if you're looking for something really special or specific, we're happy to bring it in and quarantine it for you. The caveat is that it's, we look at least 6 weeks turnaround time to order something, and that's if they're available from one of our suppliers. It's not it's not like going to the grocery store where you can pick out a one spot fox face and a flame angel and that sort of thing. It's all depends on what the suppliers have in stock, and that's what the divers happen to catch. So it's we're happy to do it, but it just requires a little bit of patience. That's all.
Right. Yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from, because I would all the time, I would have customers come to me, and they had a very specific stock list, and I'm kind of like you. I'm at the mercy of the wholesalers and the collectors, and sometimes there's certain fish you don't see for months and months. You do the best you can do. So do you ship fish all over Canada, or is there? So if I live in Canada, no matter where I live in Canada, can I buy fish from you and you will ship them to me?
Yep, we do. We ship Canada wide. We ship with either FedEx overnight or Purolator. Depends on the area, but we will we'll ship at the beginning of the week, just in case there happens to be any delays and the fish get stuck overnight or something. But everything's packed in cardboard box with a styrofoam cooler inside, and then all the fish are packed with fresh water, with fresh salt water, with pure oxygen in the bags. And if we need heat packs or ice packs or whatever else, then we'll add that as well.
Excellent. Is there any is it a arrive alive guarantee, or are there any kind of guarantees with the fish? How does that work?
Yeah, every fish comes with an arrive alive guarantee. They will if we have any sort of problems, we'll work with replacing the fish. Shipping charges are a little different story, unfortunately, but we're still sitting at 100% success rate for shipped fish, so that's not something that's really been a concern. What it really seems like is when you've had a fish that's been used to being in a tank for at least a month and has been getting high quality food. We feed all the best food, all the best fish specific foods, as well as the majority of it is seafood from the grocery store that we blend up. So a healthy fish is easily able to make it through the shipping process and be acclimated nice and quickly, and then into your tank without any real issues. But again, if something does happen, if there's a big delay or whatever else, then we have that covered as well.
Right. And I think it's important that you mention that, because I'm not trying to bang on any online retailers, but we kind of read these nightmare stories sometimes about the fish were shipped to me, in terrible shape. There wasn't much water in the bag. But I know with you guys, all the quarantine vendors, because you do go through the time and the expense of quarantine the fish, that's the other thing that you get from buying from a quarantine fish vendor, is you take extra care and TLC and precautions when you ship the fish. Because I've had the same thing happen. I've had, where FedEx, who I was shipping through, there was sometimes the fish were delayed 2-3 days. Well, guess what? The fish still made it, because, I put extra water, extra oxygen. Maybe I didn't cheap out on the heat packs or the ice packs or whatever I needed to do, because, kind of like you do, I would take into account, well, maybe the fish won't get there in 24 hours. Maybe the fish will get stuck at an airport somewhere, and they'll need to be in these bags for 48 or 72 hours. So that's another advantage of buying from a quarantine fish vendor, is the attention to detail paid to the shipping techniques of shipping out the fish.
And it's a lot of that's because we have so much more invested in our fish than somewhere else, that it's they get them in and they're advertising that we have these fish that just arrived, so come and get them. And your success rate with that method is going to be much That's just the way it is there's not nearly the level of care that's placed into fish that are just meant to be brought in and shipped out as quickly as possible.
And what you're doing is you're not only you're quarantining the fish and you're prophylactically using medications to rid them, to clean them, cleanse of diseases, but you're also conditioning them. And that's very important because, as we know, we sometimes get fish from wholesalers, and the same as people that buy retail, and these fish are emaciated, they're skinny, they're in rough shape. So by the second side of the coin is by taking the time to condition the fish. Then when the fish is shipped out, the fish is shipped to the client in the best shape possible, which is a much better, even notwithstanding the disease, it's the condition of the fish is going to be a whole lot better than what you just buy anywhere else.
That's right. And when you get something like a copper band, everybody likes them. They're extremely popular, but how I don't know one person that's only had to buy one, unfortunately.
Right.
And that's just because if somebody doesn't take the time to get them eating on some sort of prepared food, whether it's most likely going to be frozen food of some sort, then they just don't make it, and that's another advantage to buying a fish that's somebody's been looking after for a month or so, at least a month, that that fish will be ready to accept sort of our either frozen or possibly prepared dried foods as well. But they'll definitely have been eating frozen foods, because there's not too many fish that would survive a month without eating something, right? So.
Exactly. And, like you said, how many times do people buy fish, whether they quarantine them or not, the fish doesn't eat, and they're struggling to find like, well, what does this copper band butterfly, what will it eat? Well, then buying from a quarantine vendor such as yourself, they can, exactly what the fish has been eating, and you can relay that to the customer, so the customer actually can have the food ready ahead of time to feed the fish, to continue the fish, the fish is eating well. So that's excellent. And I think another thing that, and again, this is maybe new hobbyists need to know, is that, our hobby it's been taking a lot of black eyes lately. I mean, there is a lot of bad press, a lot of, some of it's justified, some of it I think is exaggerated, but basically it's saying that, the collection techniques, there's certain numbers that they're throwing out there. I've read that somewhere like 90% of all fish or something like that are collected and are brought into the aquarium trade don't last a year in captivity, something like that. So we're trying to stop that, like people like yourself, we're trying to stop that. We're trying to make this hobby sustainable. We're trying to help improve the reputation of the hobby. And like I think you said at the beginning of the interview, we're trying to get it so that you buy the fish one time and the fish lives for years and years and years. You're not constantly having to rebuy the same fish over and over again, killing the fish, which just basically gives the hobby another black eye. We're trying to make what we do sustainable. So that's another reason I feel to support quarantine fish vendors such as yourself.
Exactly. And it's not only that one individual fish, it's that, introducing velvet into a 300-gallon tank that has 20 or 30 fish in it already. And now, how many of those are going to make it? Probably not too many. So then, that's an even greater loss than was completely preventable.
Exactly. Okay. Well, is there anything else that you want to talk about before we wrap it up? Anything,
No, I think we've covered it, unless there's, I guess, that should cover it, I think.
Yeah, we've got we went through your quarantine protocol and the reasons why. Just so people know, obviously these fish are going to cost more than what you buy at a local fish store. So, when you look on Chris's website or any vendor that truly sells quarantine fish, the prices are going to be higher because of the risk that you're taking all the risk. Fish dies, you just eat that, you can't sell a dead fish. And you're going through all the time, the cost of medications, all of the risk, everything involved. The weight is on your shoulders to get the job done. And then you're shipping out healthy, well-conditioned fish to the clients, to the customers to enjoy, so.
Yeah, exactly. That's you can, like you said, you can get the same animal from somewhere else for cheaper, and if somebody's willing to put in the effort and the secondary expenses to quarantine that fish, and hopefully they are, then that's probably the better way to go. But for the average person that's tried quarantining and has lost fish before, or anything like that in quarantine, or has unfortunately, the majority of people I speak with are, have the same story where it's, I wiped out my tank once, and now, your fish cost a little more, but at least I have that bit of security, right? These maybe people that maybe don't quarantine, or don't observe rather, after they purchase from us, but the likelihood of having another tank wipe out is significantly smaller than what what they may get from purchasing elsewhere. And it's the whole reason that we kind of started the business, aside from the quality of fish, is that we set up the tank behind me actually with the idea that we're going to get a powder blue tang, which is kind of the ick magnet, and I don't know if you can see any of them. They're kind of blurry behind me, but there's also an Achilles and a hybrid Achilles in there as well.
Nice.
That we're yeah, I don't know if you can see them.
Yeah, I can see the powder blue. Oh yeah, and I think I can see the
They're all
Achilles
in the
right
middle,
there.
actually.
Yeah, they're all in the middle. Nice. Yeah, very.
But,
those are like the hardest fish to quarantine too.
exactly, and for years and years and years, I set up my first saltwater tank in 1996, I believe, and everything, it was brackish water at the time actually, but it moved to saltwater shortly after. And at that time, powder blues they cost next to nothing, and everybody, because people seem to think that they're an impossible fish to keep, and I know as well that if they don't have diseases to worry about, or parasites specifically, they're eating machines, and they're very, very hardy fish, and yeah, it just it goes to show that a little bit of extra effort, or some extra cost, and you can have those things that are meant to, that were at one point unobtainable, or unkeepable, I should say.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's we all know it's not a cheap hobby. There's quite a few expenses, and it's the amount of money that people will put into a piece of equipment, or a set of lights or whatever for over top of the tank is that a few a few extra dollars for a fish is pretty inconsequential for looking at the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. And I like something I kind of picked up on what you said, and it kind of reminded me of the few years that I was selling quarantine fish. Sounds like you're building relationships with your customers. So it's not just a matter of like, okay, you buy a fish from me and we're done. It's like, well, I know, and I still keep in touch with several of my clients that used me to stock their tanks. It's like I kind of got to know their tank, and I worked with them to stock their entire tank. And we kind of established a business relationship, but a relationship nonetheless, where they trusted me to provide them with healthy, quarantine conditioned fish, and I stocked their entire tank. And I mean, there's some there. I mean, I haven't done it now in a couple of years, and the fish are all they're doing great, and they're doing fine. And I mean, that's rewarding for me to hear that, knowing that I helped them accomplish that. So that's another nice thing I like. Sounds like you're doing the same thing, where you're building relationships with people to help them fulfill their dreams of having a healthy, successful saltwater aquarium.
For sure, yeah. I get tons of emails and texts and things like that a day, and I for around here, I deliver most fish myself. And people are all too happy to invite me in to look at their tanks, and maybe if they need a little bit of advice or something like that. And that's you know, kind of the most rewarding part of it is to be able to see, you know, the fruits of all the labor, because you know, I may keep going back to price, but the extra that I charge for fish is not, you know, it's not making us rich by any means. It's
Right.
if
No,
you
I know.
factor the amount of hours that's put in it. But you know, I you know, I started the business because I enjoy it. I like to you know, see all different types of fish, and you know, you kind of you build kind of mini relationships with the fish themselves, and then also with you know, with the people that end up taking them home, and most people are all too happy to you know, show off their tank, or they, you know, they're just happy to maybe the spouse isn't quite as into the fish tanks as they are, so if they get a chance to you know, kind of spew about their tank a little bit, they're more than happy to, and I you know, I enjoy it. I do the same, and I'm happy to spend whatever amount of time that you know, somebody wants to go over with talking about their tanks, or reefing in general, or quarantine, or any of that sort of thing.
And that's a good selling point to your spouse, because by buying quarantine fish, it's not like you have to explain, okay, honey, we got the main tank here, but in another room or whatever, you know, we have to set up a quarantine tank and filters and all kind of stuff going on. And, you know, I mean, that, you know, that
And
like,
another tank for inverts as well.
right. So do you sell quarantine corals or inverts, or fish only?
Um, for fish right now is fish is kind of the main focus, but we do you know, my biggest kind of passion is you know, it turned out to be host anemones, which are extremely difficult to get healthy ones, and that's something that we quarantine as well. We lots of magnificas lately, as well as, you know, giganteas and hadenites and things like that. That's the majority of what's in the tank behind me, actually. We're
Okay.
just yeah, we're
And you sell those as well?
yep.
Okay.
I mean, not so much these ones, but yeah, we sell lots of the host anemones, as well as bubble tips, and you know, some of the easier ones to look after.
Okay.
We as far as inverts, you know, we have tons of cleanup crews and things like that. I can't say that we do the full 76 days on all the inverts. I mean, if I had, you know, more room and could empty out some more furniture out of the house, we could manage that, and you know, kind of time everything. But what I can do is I can easily tell you know, the client when the last time we ordered, say, tropis snails or whatever else. So then they have at least, you know, a good timeline of the last time that those were in a tank with fish. All of our invert tanks are fallow, so at least we're not propagating anything in there. And you know, generally, yeah, like I said, we can let anybody know when the last time we had brought something in, so that gives the customer a good timeline of how long they should keep it in an invert quarantine, as well. And being in Canada, it's easier. Well, it's easier to quarantine inverts everywhere, but since they require no medication, it's you know, it's not an extra stress on somebody to need to acquire something special to quarantine inverts, other than host anemones, but just leave them in a tank with no fish for 76 days or 6 weeks, depending on what temperature you keep the tank at, and yeah, then they're ready to go into a display.
And I'll post a link. You know, some people are like, wait a minute, you got to quarantine the corals and inverts too. I'll post a link about that in the comment section. Yeah, you do have to quarantine corals and inverts because they can carry the encysted stage of ick and velvet. Actually, you can actually only quarantine them for 6 weeks if you can get the temperature up to 81 degrees Fahrenheit. Of course, not all inverts will tolerate. Some snails that come from the Indo-Pacific won't tolerate that, but I'll put that in to the comment section. But at least when buying from you, you can tell them, well, I got these cleanup crew, whatever, corals inverts on this date. They've been in a fishless system for this long. So then if someone buys from you, they can just say, well, I can put those in my fishless coral invert quarantine tank and start the clock, and maybe I only need to isolate them for 2 or 4 weeks or whatever.
Exactly.
So that makes it a little bit easier. to do that. So yeah, I'll put that in the comment section. Also, I'll put in the comment section your website, how to buy fish from you, your quarantine protocol, everything. So okay.
Yeah, it's and we can anybody, if somebody has any other questions, I'll watch the comments to the video here as well. You can email myself at chris@ethicalaquatics.ca. And if you have any other questions or you're looking for something specific, just go ahead and reach out, and I try to get back to everybody within, with 24 hours at the most. Usually quicker than that, but yeah, anybody that has any questions, feel free to reach out.
Outstanding. Well, Chris, Ethical Aquatics, if you need to buy quarantined fish in Canada, he's the only humble fish approved quarantine vendor in the entire country. So this is who I recommend you buy your fish from. So thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much, and thanks for all of your hard work and research and everything else that has made a lot of this more possible and much more accessible to the average person. And it's hard to say how many fish that we've or that you've saved by kind of implementing these sort of things.
Thank you. Thank you for watching this video. See links in the comments section for more detailed information, and join us on my forum to learn more about ethical aquatics and all saltwater aquarium related topics.